Hey everyone, I'm your host Peter Zablocki, and you're listening to History Shorts. I hope everyone's having a great day so far, and thank you for making this show a small part of that. If you'd like to help me out with a small gesture, please leave History Shorts a rating or a review, and click that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. For sources and books used as the basis for these episodes, how to advertise on a show, and other information such as a list of our upcoming guests on the conversation series, or a link to our Patreon account where you can find exclusive episodes not heard here, please visit www.historyshortspodcast.com. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate podcast listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the globe, all in one place. Download Podcast Republic now and take your podcast experience to the next level. Having said all of that, history often favors kings and conquerors, chronicling their wars, triumphs, and royal marriages with ink that refuses to fade. Yet behind palace walls and beneath the embroidered silks of royal courts lived another group, half invisible but half essential, who moved history in whispers and shadows. I'm talking about the concubines. Scattered across the ancient world, from Mesopotamia to China, from Persia to the Ottoman Empire, these women were more than mere objects of pleasure. They were cultural gatekeepers, political chess pieces, mothers of dynasties, and at times, wielders of astonishing influence. And yet, the world remembers them mostly by their titles, never their names. Here is the rest of that story.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
To understand concubines is to understand the very structure of ancient power. These were women in a paradox, highly visible within their palaces, yet hidden from the public, intimate with emperors, yet often without a voice of their own. Some lived in luxury, many lived in confinement. All lived in a space between freedom and servitude, between wife and slave. The word concubine itself carries layers of historical baggage. In most ancient societies, a concubine was a woman who cohabited with a man of higher status, but lacked the full legal rights of a wife. Yet that definition obscures more than it reveals. In ancient Mesopotamia, being a concubine was a recognized institution. Elite men were permitted, or even encouraged, to take concubines if their wives were barren or politically inconvenient. In Babylonian law, concubines were provided certain rights, namely housing, food, and protection, but were also considered property. A man could pass his concubines to his sons alongside cattle and coin. In ancient China, the role of concubines evolved into a systematic hierarchy. Emperors of the Han, Tang, and Ming dynasties maintained harems of hundreds, even thousands of women, carefully ranked according to titles that reflected their beauty, fertility, and favor. The empress ruled the harem, but concubines jockeyed for proximity to the emperor, for the greatest currency of all was access. A single night with the Son of Heaven could change everything. Consider the case of Empress Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor. She began her journey not as a noble, but as a low-ranking concubine of Emperor Taizong. After his death, she joined the harem of his son, Emperor Gaozong. There, she used a blend of intelligence, charm, and ruthless ambition to rise from concubine to empress consort, and eventually, through political purges, strategic alliances, and shrewd statecraft, became the de facto ruler of the entire empire. Though remembered for her brutality, Wu was also a reformer and patron of the arts, and she began her rise from the silk-draped cage of a concubine. Moving on, in the ancient Near East, the politics of concubines could reshape empires. Sarah, wife of Abraham, offered her Egyptian maid Hagar as a concubine to bear children in Genesis. Hagar's son, Ishmael, would become the ancestor of the Arab people, a fact that shaped the theology and geopolitics of three world religions. Even in biblical texts, concubines were not side characters. They were pivotal to the unfolding of divine and dynastic narratives. But the role of concubines was not always gilded. In most cultures, these women were recruited, purchased, or gifted to kings and nobles, often with no say in the matter. Captured during war, sent from distant provinces, and handed over by ambitious families hoping to gain favor, concubines were tokens of diplomacy, spoils of conquest, or sacrifices to power. In the Assyrian Empire, conquering generals brought back women in droves, selected for beauty, youth, or bloodline, all to be assigned as concubines in royal households. These women were renamed, retrained, and stripped of their origins. Within palace walls, they were adorned with jewels, yet bound by rigid rules. They could not leave, write letters freely, or engage with outsiders. The Assyrian Empire's surveillance was constant. Betrayal, real or imagined, meant exile, disfigurement, or death. And yet, for all their constraints, concubines were far from powerless. Within the harem, political factions flourished. The mother of the prince could become a queen maker. Rival concubines formed alliances, spied on each other, and influenced everything from military appointments to religious festivals by simply whispering into the leader's ear. In Ottoman Istanbul of the 16th century, the imperial harem was not merely a collection of women, it was a parallel court of power. At its height, the sultan's mother, known as Valide Sultan, wielded immense control, appointing court members and influencing foreign policy. And she, too, had once been a concubine. The story of Roxolana, also known as the Harem Sultan, is perhaps the most emblematic in the long, complex saga of concubines. Born as Anastasia or Alexandra Lisovska, she was likely the daughter of an Orthodox priest in what is now western Ukraine. As a young girl, she was captured by Crimean Tatar raiders, part of the vast slave trade that supplied women to the Ottoman Empire. Transported to Istanbul and renamed Hurrem, meaning the cheerful one, she entered the palace not as a nobility, but as a concubine among hundreds just like her. Yet, Roxolana was not content to remain anonymous in the gilded shadows. Possessing remarkable intelligence, fierce ambition, and emotional resilience, she distinguished herself quickly in Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent's harem, capturing not only his attention, but his heart. What followed was nothing short of revolutionary. Through charm, wit, and carefully calculated moves, Roxolana rose through the ranks to become Suleiman's favorite consort, eclipsing rivals and even earning his enduring devotion in a court notorious for its disposable intimacy. Most shockingly, Suleiman broke with over 2 centuries of imperial precedent by actually marrying her legally, a move that stunned the empire. Ottoman sultans had long avoided legal marriage in order to prevent dynastic alliances that might threaten the throne. Concubines bore heirs but had no claim to political power. Roxolana shattered that custom. Their letters, still preserved today, reveal a tender, sometimes poetic exchange between two powerful minds. He often calling her my sultaness and my companion of the soul, she referring to herself as the joy of his heart. This was no mere court intrigue. It was a deep, if politically charged bond. Roxolana's influence in the Ottoman Empire of the 16th century extended far beyond the bedchamber. As queen consort, she became an active player in Ottoman politics, advocating for charitable works, religious institutions, and palace infrastructure. She corresponded with foreign monarchs, advised on internal court disputes, and secured powerful positions for her allies. Her political maneuvering helped secure the throne for her own son, Selim II, rather than the more favored Mustafa, the son of another concubine, a decision that led to brutal palace intrigue and ultimately Mustafa's execution. Not all stories ended in triumph, however. Many concubines, especially those who failed to produce sons, were cast aside or forgotten. A concubine who fell out of favor could be exiled to a distant palace or confined to a life of melancholy solitude. In Ming China, if an emperor died, his concubines were sometimes forced into ritual suicide or permanent isolation. Some were buried alive with their lords, a grim testament to their expendability. In art and literature, concubines were often idealized or vilified, or often used as sexual objects. Painted reclining on cushions, draped in translucent silks, they became exotic fantasies in Western Orientalist art. But the reality was rarely so romantic. Their lives as a whole were shaped by surveillance, rivalry, and fear. So, did concubines ever truly love their lords? Well, occasionally, yes. Though love in such environments was often tangled in layers of survival, ambition, and performance. In some courts, a spark of genuine affection could flicker into something deeper. The Japanese tale of Lady Murasaki, though partially fictionalized in the tale of Genji, offers a haunting window into the emotional labyrinth of court life during the Heian period. Women like Murasaki lived as consorts in a world of poetic language, clandestine trysts, and carefully coded gestures, where love was as much a performance as a passion. Yet even in such constrained roles, emotional intimacy could form, especially when a concubine was chosen not just for her beauty, but for her intellect, wit, and companionship. But for most, love was a luxury. Survival came first. A smile could be strategic, a glance, a weapon. Today, many of their names are lost, but traces remain in scrolls, tablets, and palace records. Thanks for listening.